Good evening and welcome to Lens at 177. This evening, I'm sitting in for your regular host, Anish Chand, and my name is Sharon Wilson. Also this evening, we have with us a very familiar face and the National Secretary for the Fiji Trades Union Congress, Mr. Felix Anthony. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, the discussions this evening will be centering around the amendments or the Employment Relations Amendment Bill. Now, the consultations that have been happening over the past few weeks, and which we understand that the Ministry of Employment has now extended to another 2 weeks. So, of course, we have widely reported concerns by businesses about certain proposals that have come up throughout the consultation period, and of course what had come out of the Employment Relations Advisory Board proposals, which is what we had discussed earlier, replaces what we used to know as the Tripartite Forum. Mr. Anthony, I wanted some clarification on the ERAB recommended these changes. Were you a part of the process?
Yes, I certainly was part of the process. From the very start, the discussions on the review commenced in 2011. I was there. And the parties met on a number of occasions to, first of all, to agree on the terms of reference for the review. And I must say that there was agreement that there were 4 areas that the parties were to look at for the review. First was to ensure that Fiji complied with all the ILO core conventions. The second was to address all the issues that the Committee of Experts of the ILO had urged government to act upon for a number of years. The third was to include the newly ratified conventions, that was the Maritime Labour Convention and the Convention 190, that's on violence and harassment against women. And of course, the fourth issue was that the parties were to identify any gaps within the current legislation and make submissions on that for the tripartite partners to discuss and include within the review. So yes, so the review has been ongoing, but rather on an ad hoc basis with the previous government. The first metrics on the review was published in 2016, and since then there were 5 volumes of the metrics, which the metrics actually contain the current provisions, the proposed amendments to that, and the positions that the parties took, the employers, the government, and the unions. And so there were 5 of those, and the most recent one was just last year. So we've been at this for quite some time.
Just in terms of the process and what happened with that, the ERAB, the proposals that emanated from the ERAB, there's some concerns that employers' reps on ERAB were prohibited from talking to members about the review because they were forced to sign non-closure agreements and not being privy to what the actual proposals were. And now that the consultation period was rushed during the holiday season, they're saying there's not enough consultation time on this, and why is this being rushed?
Now that is quite misleading. Yeah, the metrics on the proposed amendments was available to the parties, all 3 parties, and as I said, the first one was available in 2016. Yeah, that's almost 9 years from now. And then there were, like I said, 5 other volumes with amendments as we discussed them over and over again. So the amendments I think we've discussed about 6 or 7 times all over again. And a repetition at every time the employers complained that no, we need to have further discussions, the ministry actually obliged. And we had to go over the whole matrix over and over again. But on this allegation that they could not discuss it with their own colleagues, that is totally untrue. The non-disclosure agreement was signed so that it would not be made public in the media or discussed in the media or to other people who were not part of the discussions. And the only reason we agreed to that was because the discussions were ongoing and the draft that was given was subject to amendments as we went on. So the whole idea was that we would complete the review before it was made available to the public. That's how we had agreed. And the employers were free to go to their own executive committees or whatever committee they may have to discuss that, make submissions, and submissions were invited by the ministry. The workers, similarly, we were free to go to our council meetings and discuss the progress and make submissions, which we did. Unfortunately, the employers chose not to make submissions at that time. Yeah? So to say that, oh, it was a whole secret, I think that is very misleading.
So members of the public are claiming that the amendment bill is entirely pro-union. And of course, the rhetoric that's been reported, that's emanating out of the consultation period, that it's entirely pro-union without any attempt to balance this with employers' needs and the national interest in terms of attracting investment. What's your comments?
Well, again, I must say that I've attended the public consultations. I personally made it my duty to attend these consultations to hear the public. And there were no such objections made, or observations made at all in any of the public consultations that I attended. Yes, I know Mr. Apted has been in the media talking about that there has been no public consultations. He himself chose not to attend public consultations. I attended them to hear what the public had to say about this bill, and there was nothing like that that was said. Of course, what we're talking about in this bill here is not about whether it's in favor of the unions or favor of the employers. It's about complying with the core ILO conventions. It's about complying with workers' rights, fundamental rights. It's about compliance with human rights as well. There are issues in regards to human rights. And, of course, to address the gaps that exist in the current law. And what we've also done in the process is to speak to the labor inspectors to see where they had difficulties trying to enforce the law. And all that has been incorporated in this review. So it's not about being the workers' side or the union side. That's, that kind of campaign I don't think should run. What I think those few critics need to look at is how and why we've addressed some of the issues that impact workers on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anthony, for that clarification. Now, we've now come to the end of this first segment. Stay with us. The next segment, we will be discussing some of the penalties which have concerned employers and has been termed draconian in nature. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Lens at 177. I'm Sharon Wilson, standing in for Anish Chand this evening. And with us this evening is the National Secretary for the Fiji Trade Unions Congress, the Congress that's been fighting for workers' rights since 1951. Mr. Anthony, I'm just carrying on from what we had discussed earlier. The concerns have been that the proposals are draconian in nature, and especially with the penalties and the criminal aspects of the penalties that are now proposed in the bill, which have concerned businesses. Your comments, please.
Well, I think we need to look at what the penalties are and for what breaches of the law that we're talking about. I know Mr. Eptich talked about, employers can face up to $500,000 in fines for any violation of the draft bill. That is grossly untrue. Yeah, the $500,000 fine appears once in the draft bill, and that fine is where employers have been found guilty by the courts to having practiced forced labor. And what we would term in today's age as modern day slavery. Yeah? That is what the $500,000 fine is for only, and not for other infringements in the law. So I believe, and your newspaper actually reported that on the 24th of January and quoted Mr. Apted as saying that. That is absolutely not true. Yeah? And let me also say that there is a fine for $1 million, and that is for wage theft. Yeah? That's the only fine that is to that amount, and that is because of the persistent wage theft that goes on in this country by some unscrupulous employers. Yeah? We have in courts millions of dollars of claims for unpaid wages, unauthorized deductions, non-payment of meal allowances, and all sorts of other deductions that have been made, including for safety wear as well, which is, again, a breach of the law on its own. So, I am personally involved with one employer who we have a claim of which exceeds $2 million. Yeah, and that was 5 years ago, so it's probably up to $4 million now because they continue to engage in these illegal practices. And does Mr. Apted or anyone want that we just fine them $1,000 and let them to get away with that?
So
how fair would that be?
Are we penalizing or are we roping in good employers versus the bad employers, which seems like
the good employers will not be engaged in wage theft, so they don't need not worry about the fines. Yeah, it's the bad guys who actually continue to violate the laws that should be worried about the fines, not the good guys. And it makes me suspicious that you have the good guys complaining. I mean, why would they be worried if they are not going to commit any offense?
Should the proposals in the law be passed by Parliament as is?
Yes, I firmly believe that it should be. It's a product of tripartite discussions. And as we have repeatedly said, the employers have also said this, that more than 80% of what is there has been agreed to by the tripartite partners. What we had said was that the 15, 20% that we had not agreed to or managed to agree between the employers and the unions, the government was going to make a call on that, and the government has made a call on that. Yeah, I mean, of course, we have issues with this bill. We don't believe that everything that we've wanted is in the bill, but I think the bill substantially addresses the concerns that we have, the concerns that ILO has, and that we comply with the core labor standards.
Now, John Apted and has said that the unions, after 16 years, are trying to have their way with this law. Would you agree to that?
I totally disagree. I mean, I think everyone knows in this country, including Mr. Apted, that the unions were being bashed during that 16 years of the previous government. Right? We had the previous government impose on us the Essential Industries Decree, the Political Parties Decree, the Crimes Decree. And actually, the Crimes Decree actually tried to call trade unions who spoke against the government as terrorists in this country. Yeah? There was no consultations then. There was no Mr. Apted yelling out about where is the consultation. They were all imposed on us, and the unions were being bashed during this period. Yeah? All we're trying to do is to ensure that workers' rights are respected, and it's not about getting back at anyone. I think employers shouldn't be feeling sorry for themselves here. It's about putting right what was wrong and imposed on us during that period. I would have certainly appreciated the same Mr. Apted jumping up and down about the consultation process or the lack of it or the absence of it during that period when all these laws were imposed on the workers unfairly and in breach of fundamental rights, in breach of human rights, in breach of ILO conventions.
Now, these proposals to the amendments have come out of a forum that has included the three parties. Is this resulting in the tripartite system or the tripartite forum at risk? And what would the unions do if these proposals are blocked or delayed?
Well, we certainly are committed to the tripartite process. That's an internationally recognized process which the ILO recognizes. And of course, Convention 144 actually encourages the entire world to have a tripartite process where you can have such consultations. And not only that, but Fiji has ratified Convention 144 and is obliged to have a tripartite body that could deal with these issues. And I think if Mr. Apted's unhappy about that, he might have to go to the International Court of Justice to challenge ILO's Convention 144 on that.
In terms of the need for balance, do you see the need to balance, of course, the union's obligations to workers and your commitment to workers with the interests of employers?
Yes, there must be a balance. Of course we want, and this review is that balancing act that we are doing. I mean, are you trying to tell workers of this country that we can't have the freedom of association? Let's compromise on that. Or are we trying to tell workers, let's not have collective bargaining, let's compromise on that? Or are we trying to tell workers we can put up with sexual harassment at the workplace and not have too many stiff penalties on that? Or are we going to try and say to employers, you can steal from the poor workers, we'll turn a blind eye to it? If a worker steals, he goes to jail. But if an employer steals, are we supposed to treat them with respect and dignity? Is that what we want in this country? Is that what you call balance? That's no balance at all. That's grossly unfair and unethical, really. What we want is to balance this, and this bill here balances that to say, if you do wrong, there's got to be a penalty to it, yeah. And I, like I say, I repeatedly say we have good employers who have no issues with this. And in the course of the public consultations, I've had many employers come and say, no problem, it's all good, yeah. We don't have to worry because we will abide by the law. Yeah, and let me just say that, when we talk balance, we're going to have to keep in mind human rights, fundamental human rights, workers' rights as well. You're not going to compromise on that. These are some of the issues that are not negotiable.
You're watching Lens at 177. We'll be back after this break with the National Secretary of the Fiji Trade Unions Congress, Mr. Felix Anthony. Welcome back to Lens at 177. This evening we have with us the National Secretary for the Fiji Trade Unions Congress, Mr. Felix Anthony. My name is Sharon Wilson and I'm standing in for your regular host, Anish Chand. Mr. Felix Anthony, of course, you may have seen media reports last week where John Apted had expressed concerns about the proposals that have come out of the ERAP discussions and some of the concerns about how this can affect investment and criminal liability. In support of those comments, the Minister for Trade had also come out in the media saying that the proposals are draconian, and if the businesses need more time, they should be extended more time in terms of the consultations. Your comments on the criminal liability aspects of this?
Yes, I think Mr. Apted has dramatized the impact of the the bill itself, and not only that, but misled a lot of people. Let me just address this issue about businesses shutting down. This is the usual thing we get from employers every time we either talk about minimum wage or we talk about any improvements to labor laws. Oh, businesses will shut down, investors will run away. This is the argument that catches the ear of government usually. And I see that strategy working here, is that, once we talk about investment and business shutdowns, people in government will wake up to it. Well, this is all baloney. We've never seen this happen, either with labor law review, which when we had the first Employment Relations Act in 2007, this was the same argument that the employers put, this is the end of the world. Yeah, same argument I'm hearing now after so many years. Again, that businesses will go. Well, we want investment in this country, but what we want is investors who want to play by the rules, not the fly-by-night investors who think they can come and exploit workers here and get away with it without any penalties. Yeah? And in fact, we don't want those kind of investors. We want employers who want to play by the rules. Of course, the criminal liability, again, we have good employers who need not worry about any liability whatsoever, whether it's penalties or criminal liability at all. Yeah? Mr. Apted also talked about if he was a bank. Well, the banks are also exploiters here, where they get workers to work beyond their normal hours of work without paying overtime as well. And this is, again, we see that as exploitation, only because they tend to call their employees staff. So they disqualify for overtime. And usually they rake in tens of millions of dollars in profits every year, which does not filter down to the poor workers. A criminal record, again, if you do wrong, I mean, we have the crimes decree. We have all kinds of laws in this country. If you commit a crime, you will get a criminal record. If you don't commit a crime, you're okay. You won't get a record. So we don't want employers who come here with who commit crimes and get away scot-free. He's also talked about employers handling union recruitment. Again, misleading. Yeah, there's nothing in the law that says that employers will be recruiting for workers for unions. No. All we're saying in the law or draft law is that the employers must give the worker the choice to either belong to a union or not to belong to a union. That's the choice. And that is freedom of association. And let me remind Mr. Apted and the employers here that the Convention 87 on freedom of association and 98 on collective bargaining is an obligation not only on the unions to fight for every time, it's an obligation of the tripartite partners, because these conventions were adopted by a tripartite delegation at the ILO. Fiji was part of that delegation. And let me also say that Fiji has reaffirmed time and again that it will abide by the conventions on freedom of association and collective bargaining. So this is the time for Fiji to act on that. He's also talked about hours of work, that saying 40 and 48 hours is revolutionary. What's revolutionary about that? We've had that since the 1970s, yeah, where the hours of work has not changed at all. And that's really no amendment that we have here. And his claim that overseas people work 80 hours is utter nonsense, because the trend overseas is that workers are working lesser hours. In fact, up to 36, 37 hours a week to ensure that there's a work-life balance, yeah, and not 80 hours a week. On the tripartite structure, I've already spoken about that. We have the Employment Relations Advisory Board, which is compliant with Convention 144, which Fiji has ratified. On the non-disclosure, again, I've said that that's totally untrue. Yeah, the parties were free to go and consult with the executives and make submissions on that.
So is it safe to state that the ERA Act must change now because elections is next year and there could be a change of government, and then this the whole political environment would stall the process again if government changes?
Well, this has got nothing really to do with elections, really. This is an obligation that the tripartite partners undertook in 2006 when we finally completed the 2006 review, in which I was also involved for 10 years prior to that. Yeah. The parties had agreed that there would be a review within 5 years of the bill becoming an act to ensure that we achieve what we had intended to, and also to fill in the gaps as the parties saw moving forward. So we're already this review ought to have been completed by 2013 or 14. We're already more than 10 years behind time. And yet I still hear this mantra about more time, more time. And this call or campaign for more time started in August of this last year. And this is now what, 4 or 5 months down the line? We still hear the people singing the same song. So how much more time do we need?
Now, the reports that have emanated out of this in the consultation period are that the unions have too much power. Now you're saying we have too little power because of the threat of businesses pulling out the investment. Or do you have the right amount of power? What's your opinion?
No, it's not about union power. It's all about workers' rights. It's not about union power. It's about giving the workers in our country a fair go, which they deserve. And I think it's an obligation, not only part of the unions, it's part of the employers, part of government, to ensure that workers' rights are protected. We want everyone to do well, including the workers. And so far, you have seen, over the last 16 years with the previous government, the gap between the rich and the poor has simply widened. And workers have fallen behind, well behind. And even now, with the minimum wage set at $4.50, we are below the poverty line. And that's nothing we ought to be proud of. Not the unions, not the employers, not the government.
This bill in its form and the proposals along with it, if it's passed in Parliament, would you then say that it is clearly representative of the need for a government to address workers' rights and making sure that workers' rights are protected?
This bill will go a long way to protect workers' rights. I think we have comprehensively addressed the issues that were raised at the ILO, I've mentioned that a number of times now. And I also recall the political parties that are in government today, all of which had promised during their campaign that they will uphold workers' rights and ensure decent work. More recently, the Prime Minister, while addressing workers at Vatakola during the payment for compensation, again assured workers that his government was going to strive to ensure decent work for our people. Yeah? And decent work is not only about decent pay, it's about dignity at work. And I will remind government that they ought to keep their promise in this respect.
What's your response to naysayers who's saying that the union is abusing its power throughout this process?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
What's your response to those who have claimed that the unions are abusing their power in this process and that they're getting what they want out of this?
I see no substance in that claim whatsoever. There is absolutely no abuse of power here. We had a responsibility to fulfill. We've worked hard on this review. We've made submissions whenever we were called to do so. I personally attended every consultation meeting, whether it was Arab meeting or even the public consultations. I personally attended every meeting, and ensured that our view was taken on board. And not only that, but when we discussed these issues, we actually related to what was happening on the ground with workers and to see how we could stop the abuses and the violations that were going on. So it's I don't think anyone can blame the unions if we've worked hard to ensure that our views are taken on board. I must say that I can't say the same for the employers, because I have not seen FCEF attend any of the public consultations. I have not seen the president of FCEF or any senior executive of FCEF attend any of the consultations with Arab that we had. And unlike the FTUC, we've attended every. And like I said, I've been in each and every meeting since 2011. And this is now 2025. I'm still prepared to attend every meeting. And not only that, but I must say that we're getting a bit frustrated with the constant call of more time and more time. Yeah, but nothing seems to be happening other than an attempt to try and delay this whole process and discredit it. That's what I see is happening out there. And we will ask Mr. Apted and his colleagues to stop the fear-mongering that's going on now. That must stop. And let's look at the details and understand why it is there. And I see Mr. Apted's not even attended any public consultations as well.
You've said that discussions have been going on since 2011. Obviously, this is not a rushed process, as some claim.
Definitely not. Definitely not. How many more years do we need for this? Yeah, and like I say, we're 10 years behind time here. Yeah, and we're still trying to address these issues. And I would really like to go to the International Labour Conference this year in June and report that we have addressed the concerns that have been raised. And if there are going to be some, what they call a balancing act of going halfway, then Fiji is going to continue to be on the list of rogue states, as it has been for the 16 years prior to this government. And I'm sure no one wants that.
In the event that we've compromised so much on the changes to the bill, like you said, you're going to the convention, and we continue to be on the list of rogue states. What are the implications for workers' rights in a country like Fiji when we're listed as a rogue state?
Well, for one is the reputation of the country. Fiji is pretty famous at the ILO for all the wrong reasons. Right? I mean, we just avoided a commission of inquiry into Fiji. We've had a few contacts mission come to Fiji as well from the ILO to see progress or lack of it. And so far, there has been no good reporting other than the last conference where the current Minister for Labour gave a very positive report to say, we are on our way, we will fix it. Right? And I'm certainly hoping that we will fix it and not continue this, because we don't want. I mean, Fiji has made commitments at the ILO year in, year out with the previous government and never kept it. So I think it's important that we ensure that our reputation is not at stake. Quite apart from that, the people who worry about investments about this, yeah, if Fiji continues to be in that list of rogue states, investment is going to be impacted, yeah? And not only that, but I really think we need to be sincere and honest about this and not use just simply investment as an excuse to say, oh, we can't do much. No.
In terms of the number of affiliates you have, that's including how many workers?
That would be in excess of about 40,000.
40,000
yeah.
Workers who want a change or who hoping for a change to this?
Yeah. Well, let me say that it's not only workers that are in the union. I think what we're doing more is for workers who are not in the union, because that's where exploitation takes place. Yeah. And what we're doing is we're not only working for our members, we're looking at workers overall nationally. Yeah. We want every worker to have a fair go in this country. Right? And we respect their right to join or not to join a union.
If this proposed law is delayed or blocked, does it affect the union's authority and reputation?
Well, it won't affect our authority. I mean, we will continue to push and fight and campaign for the changes to take place to ensure compliance with everything I've said. It will affect the reputation of the country itself and, of course, the government itself, because it has made commitments and we expect the government to keep its commitments.
In terms, there's some concerns that there's not enough information that has gone out in terms of the 142 sections that are in the amendment bill, which lay people cannot understand what the amendments are. Was there any effort to publish the full version or a detailed explanation of the bill?
Well, I understand it's on the Ministry of Labour website. That's available to anyone who is interested. On our part, on the workers' side, from very early on when we started the tripartite discussions, we went out to our workers, we discussed the issues, they're well aware of the issues. No, we didn't dream up these issues, we actually got it from the workers. And if the employers have failed to consult their own people during that period, I don't believe they can blame the unions for it or even the government for it.
If there is a demand to extend further than the 2 weeks, what's your comment?
They demanded this in August of last year. Yeah, they already had 3-4 months, and now we're in almost February, 5 months. Yeah, and if they can't get the act together in 5 months, I doubt they will do it in the next 2 weeks.
There are suggestions that because the current Minister for Labour came from the is a union man himself, he has sort of treated the unions favorably throughout this consultation process. What are your comments?
I laugh at this kind of comments. Basically, the Minister for Labour does no favor at anyone. I mean, all these months, all these years, we had Minister for Labour from employers' side. No one complained. Yeah, 16 years on the previous government, we had employers sitting as Minister for Labour. And the Employers' Federation had unlimited access to them all the time. We didn't complain about that. Why is it now that people are getting so desperate and getting personal about the Minister for Labour here? Yeah, only because he was a workers' man? Huh? Are we prepared to discriminate and say a workers' man cannot be Minister for Labour? Only employers can be Minister for Labour? Is that what we want in this country?
Thank you very much, Mr. Anthony, for your time with us this evening. That brings us to the end of another program on Lens at 177. And this evening, again, we've had the National Secretary for the Fiji Trade Union Congress. Thank you, Mr. Anthony, for your time.
Thank you.